Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you very much for joining us today for the session. This is our final HNPW session that Hulo is facilitating on joining human resources and sharing expertise, whether this can be potentially a solution to our funding challenges that we're all facing. And I'm sure that's been the theme of across many sessions at this year's HNPW. It would be impossible to not speak about funding challenges. And now more than ever, we really need to find ways to work collaboratively to use our remaining resources efficiently and to avoid unnecessary duplication where we can. I know we have a lot of HR colleagues joining today, and they know all too well the really heartbreaking choices that we're having to make right now just to keep organizations afloat and moving forward. So today, in this context, we want to present an idea which we feel could be part of this solution. It's not the whole solution. There's a really complicated stream that we need to navigate in the next year. But we have this idea of joining HR across different organizations, which is in the early stages of prototyping, and we thought it was exactly the right time to explore it more and discuss today. So I will start, many of you know Hulo already, but I will just give you a very, very brief introduction of who we are. So we're a cooperative organisation of 16 members, many of whom are here. Thank you very much for joining. It was set up by NGOs and for NGOs as a way to look at pooling resources in the supply chain, and with the fundamental principle that we're stronger together. So what we do, we innovate new approaches, we prototype them, and we start then to take them to scale. And this is one of the initiatives that we will be looking at today. Hulo, together with members of the cooperative, facilitates joint initiatives of different flavors in lots of different countries, and we have over 100 organizations who've participated so far. The different types of joint initiative that we're talking about, they might be digital solutions, which some of you will be familiar with. We have a shared resources app. We have a digital supply chain software that our cooperative has been working to develop, but also joint initiatives around procurement, around environmental sustainability, which is really core to our values and to our identity, around HR, around transport. And all of these are really underpinned by a data-driven commitment. So we're a data-driven organization, and we use that data to make decisions. If you want to find out a bit more about Hulo and what we do, you can obviously go to our website. There's also two papers that we've produced recently. So a call for community, looking at the context of the devastating funding crisis in the first quarter of this year, and how community and working together could hopefully help us navigate the storm. And a technical briefing paper on the state of humanitarian procurement produced for DG ECHO by the cooperative and in partnership with the Interagency Procurement Group. So that's enough about Hulo. What's joint HR and how is it different? Let's think about how we do things at the moment where we don't join HR. We have a need identified, and basically we have three options at our disposal. We can recruit internally or second from a different part of our organization, or we could recruit externally, a permanent or fixed term contract. But we have challenging markets to recruit in. We have budget challenges. We have challenges at the moment where we don't have sufficient budgets to maintain our resource structures, even though we need those resources to fulfill the tasks. The tasks aren't going away or simplifying or scaling down nicely just because we have a budget constraint. And so in those situations where we have those challenges, then we can fail to meet the need. So let me present a different option, a mindset shift. Joint HR. We still have that need identified. We have those budget or market constraints, or as many of us are finding at the moment, we have an ongoing need that we can't maintain, we can't afford to maintain. Let's think about this differently. Is it really a full-time need? Could it be shared? Could it be done differently? Do other NGOs also have this need? Is there a value in coming together and saying, do we all need to have the same replicated structures, whether that's in supply chain, whether it's in other parts of our organization, whether it's experts that we draw on for a specific need? Maybe other organizations have existing capacity that we could share. Maybe there's a value in looking across the humanitarian ecosystem and seeing if we could do things a bit differently. Now, I know many of you will already be thinking of some of the problems and challenges to doing that, some really genuine and real problems and challenges around processes, around how we interoperate across organizations, and that's what we want to try and explore today, to share 3 different examples of how this has been tested and some of the learning from that so that hopefully we can move forward. So to do that, I have a group of experts with me today. I'm very pleased to introduce to you. We have Philine Micheron, who's the Environment Coordinator at Hulo, and she has been championing the use of joint resources as an instrument to achieving environmental sustainability resourcing. This is an area that we all know across our organisations is a really challenging market to recruit, and our needs are not necessarily continuous. We may have needs that come for a specific period of time and then go away. We're very pleased to have Ezekiel Apuingo-Lorna, who's the logistics coordinator with Oxfam in the Central African Republic, who's joining us today to talk about his experiences in joint HR and to share a practical example there. Fabrice Perrault, who's the Logistics and Information Systems Director for Solidarité International, is joining us to challenge us about how this could go forward and to share his vision for this area of work. Mahmoud Khalifa is joining us. He's the regional coordinator for the Middle East with Hulo. And some really interesting examples there where some spontaneous needs have come together to identify a resource pooling opportunity. And last but not least, Cécile Marchesson, who's the Purchasing and Financial Control Manager at Hulo, who's been working a lot on the detail, and the devil is always in the detail, but the detailed processes and ways of working, how to realise joint HR. What does this really mean? Because we all know that you can come up with a great idea, but unless we can operationalise it, it will stay just as an idea. So on that note, I'm going to pass over to Cécile to give us a bit of an introduction. Just to orientate you on the session, we'll be doing most of the session in English, but there will be a section of the session which is in French and will be translated in the chat. So please keep an eye on the chat and I'll let you know when that starts. Also, please ask questions. We have a good period of time at the end of the session today where we can have a Q&A, and we'd really like to know your questions and what you'd like to know more about. So please use the Q&A, which should be at the top of the Teams chat, to ask your questions through the session. So I pass now to Cécile. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. So today we're going to talk a bit about some examples of shared HR that we've tried within the cooperative. The idea of this session is not to say that we really know how to share an HR, because every situation is different and has different challenges. But we really wanted to share with you some examples of what we've done. So it could maybe inspire you, give you some ideas, and maybe help you if you decide to share an HR. So first, let's start with why would you decide to share an HR? The first question. The first reason, the most obvious one, is to save money. So if you have a staff in your payroll, but you don't have the money or you don't have the workload to keep that staff full-time, sharing this staff would be a good option for you to save money. And on the other hand, if you decide to hire a new staff, going jointly would allow you to share a lot of the fixed costs related to the recruitment of this staff, and it will also allow you to save money. The second reason would be to preserve experience and knowledge. So what Rebecca was saying in the introduction, if you can't afford to keep the staff that you already have in your payroll, one of the options would be to let that staff go and to reorganize your department. But it would be a huge loss for you in terms of experience, knowledge, and training. So going with a shared staff, sharing this staff would be very good for your organization. On the other hand, if you want to hire someone new, hiring someone that is already working part-time in another organization is also very good to build on the experience that this person has. The third reason would be to benefit from the community's expertise. So if you want to hire someone in a field where you are not an expert in, going with a joint HR would allow you to benefit from another participant's expertise, and that would help you to recruit and to manage this HR. And the last reason why you could decide to go with a joint HR would be if you want to really work on a global problem. So if you want to hire for a position that would work like on regulation or on compliance or security, it doesn't make sense to have different people in all the organization. It would be better to go jointly and to have just one person working for the whole humanitarian ecosystem. And this would be very good to avoid a duplication of efforts or a loss of resources. So the next slide, we're going to, so it's a few figures to show that we've tried many things during the last year or the last 2 years with a short-term, long-term initiatives with very different participants. Some were with very few participants, some were with a lot of participants. And so this has given us an idea of what could work more easily and what could be more easily replicated within your organization. So this is why we decided to focus on 3 main kind of initiatives today on the next slide. So the 3 different types of joint HR that we're going to present to you today. The first one is sharing a resource for a specific activity. So if you really need an expertise on a specific topic, most of the time for a short-term period. The second one would be to share a resource on ongoing activities. So in that situation, the shared HR would really be a part of your HR setup and of your team for a long time. And the last type of joint HR that we're going to present today is sharing a resource for cross-cutting activities. So the one we just mentioned, where it makes sense to go with a pooled resource to avoid duplication. Okay, so the first type, joint HR for a specific activity. In that situation, it would most of the time be a short-term project with a very clear and concrete deliverable. Ideally, we would advise you to go with between 5 and 10 participants because with more participants, it would be very complicated to coordinate the initiative. And with less than 5, it could end up being at least a bit expensive because you don't have enough participants to split the fixed costs. And in this kind of initiative, we would advise you again to go with a very objective and a very simple variable to split the costs. For example, if your initiative is on fleet management, you would share the costs based on the number of vehicles. If your initiative is a training, you would split the cost based on the number of trainees. And this would make the setup easier to manage. So to illustrate this kind of joint HR, we have Ezekiel today with us. On the next slide. Yes. He's a logistics coordinator with Oxfam in Central Africa, and he participated in one of the initiatives that took place in CAR on a joint expert electrician. So this part will be in French, and Erin will do the translation in the chat. Thank you, Erin. Bonjour Ezekiel, merci d'être avec nous dans ce panel aujourd'hui. Et bienvenue, je ne te vois pas à l'écran, mais... Est-ce que tu pourrais nous parler un peu de l'initiative à laquelle tu as participé en RCA l'année dernière?
Bonjour à tous. Je vais essayer de mettre ma caméra pour que vous puissiez me voir, mais je vais l'enlever après à cause de la connexion. Donc, je ne sais pas si vous me voyez.
On te voit bien, oui.
OK. Voilà, je salue tout le monde. Oui, l'expérience en termes de ressources humaines mutualisées auxquelles j'ai eu à participer activement, c'est celui de de l'électricien mutualisé. Il faut rappeler que je suis avec Oxfam depuis quand même en 2013 et je venais d'une mission en Mauritanie. Donc, je rejoins la mission RCA en 2023, octobre. Donc, j'ai trouvé que l'initiative était déjà en cours, mais la première phase n'avait pas été totalement bien finalisée parce que à cause de certaines difficultés, l'initiative n'avait pas eu à finir les objectifs escomptés. Et donc, nous avons vu l'opportunité de la deuxième phase. Et donc, ça a commencé par la planification des, des, des besoins. En tout cas, au niveau du cluster, il se trouve que l'ensemble des partenaires avaient un problème et d'où la nécessité de pouvoir trouver un moyen collectif, n'est-ce pas, de résoudre ce problème. Et donc, lors des différentes réunions au niveau du cluster, tout le monde avait ses besoins d'électriciens, chaque organisation avait quand même les mêmes problèmes. Et donc, nous avons vu l'opportunité de nous mettre ensemble et sous la coordination de Hulo, qui a quand même fait un grand travail pour, n'est-ce pas, affiner ce projet. Et donc, l'initiative est partie de l'expression des besoins des organisations et chaque organisation présente dans un tableau que Hulo avait partagé et nous avons renseigné chaque organisation ses besoins. Ensuite, il fallait trouver une clé de répartition. Nous avons trouvé qu'on pouvait aller avec le mètre carré ou bien la surface électrifiée de chaque organisation pour pouvoir faire cette mutualisation. Et aussi, il y avait le problème également de géographie, tel que certaines bases des organisations, c'était à la capitale, d'autres avaient des besoins qui se trouvaient sur les bases au niveau des terrains. Donc, il fallait voir comment mettre en boucle et affiner, n'est-ce pas, un tableau d'expression des besoins pour pouvoir monter les projets. Et donc, nous avons fait ce travail et sous, n'est-ce pas, la coordination de Hulo, qui a rassemblé tout, compilé et partagé aux différentes organisations. Ça, c'était la première phase. La deuxième phase, c'était également de pouvoir gérer le recrutement, n'est-ce pas, de l'expert électricien. Et donc ça, c'est Hulo qui avait vraiment porté le projet, mais au niveau de la définition de cahier de charges, des objectifs de l'électricien, les organisations ont quand même participé pour pouvoir, n'est-ce pas, définir quels sont les objectifs et ce que l'électricien devait faire en termes de cahier de charges. Après ça, nous avons également été ensemble pour la planification de son déploiement. Et donc, chaque organisation s'est inscrite sur la boucle qui est concernée, n'est-ce pas, son domaine ou bien la base, la boucle vers laquelle se trouvaient ces bases. Et donc, nous avons également contribué à la planification à ce niveau. Et l'année également de l'électricien, l'équipe de Hulo a tenu à le présenter à chaque organisation pour quand même faire un briefing et pour qu'une prise de contact soit faite avec les différents logisticiens et référents pour pouvoir faciliter son travail. Donc ça, c'est un peu l'aspect, je dirais, de comment l'initiative a été démarrée et aussi et comment les besoins ont été planifiés au départ. Et je dirais que nous avons tous été unanimes pour que cela soit fait dans le respect, n'est-ce pas, des règles sécuritaires de chaque organisation et, n'est-ce pas, pour que les missions, surtout au niveau du terrain, puissent se faire normalement, mais aussi, peut-être, je parlerai de quelques difficultés qu'on a connues euh, lorsque on devait faire le déploiement, n'est-ce pas, sur le terrain. Et il y avait un peu de difficultés par rapport aux accès, le suivi, les validations du mouvement, etc. Ça, c'était un peu, on a constaté un peu quand même quelques difficultés à ce niveau. Sinon, au niveau de démarrage, en tout cas, je peux résumer ainsi comment le processus a démarré. Voilà, je ne sais pas si je peux continuer ou vous avez
Ouais,
des
c'est super.
observations, des questions.
Est-ce que tu peux peut-être nous parler un peu des difficultés ou des problèmes que vous avez rencontrés sur le projet?
Bon, comme je l'avais déjà dit, ce n'est pas une difficulté majeure. Du moment où les besoins ont été exprimés quand même par les différentes organisations, et tout le monde était à saluer, n'est-ce pas, l'arrivée de l'initiative. Mais ce que j'ai vu comme difficulté, peut-être, c'est des difficultés internes à chaque organisation, maintenant qui répercutent parce que gérer plusieurs organisations avec des règles de sécurité, avec des procédures différentes, ce n'est pas une tâche facile. Et moi, je pense que l'équipe à l'époque, Milena, qui avait beaucoup travaillé, vraiment, elle a vraiment travaillé pour que la mission, en tout cas la planification, soit réussie. Et l'exemple que je donnerai, c'est qu'il arrivait des fois que, comme on avait fait la planification, si on prend par exemple l'axe Bangui, Bossangoa, pour aller vers la boucle de Pawa, il fallait faire un arrêt de l'expert dans les bases des organisations. Par exemple, dans la ville de Bossangoa, il pouvait se trouver 2 ou 3 organisations, ainsi de suite à Pawa. Et la planification était déjà faite. Et maintenant, dans l'opérationnalisation de cette planification, il se peut que telle organisation n'a pas réagi vite, n'a pas validé vite pour que les véhicules bougent. Et ça se trouve que, par exemple, l'électricien se retrouve bloqué à un point A pour bouger en attente peut-être d'une journée. Après ça, il peut bouger par la suite et ainsi de suite. Donc ça, c'est ce que nous avons géré. Et moi, particulièrement, quand j'étais là, on a beaucoup contribué pour que quand même au niveau sécuritaire, parce qu'on avait des équipes et des moyens de communication sur les axes et on avait pu mettre ça à contribution avec l'équipe de Hulo à l'époque pour les appuyer à suivre le mouvement, n'est-ce pas, de l'électricien. Donc, les difficultés que je trouve, c'est peut-être là à ce niveau. Mais l'autre difficulté aussi, c'est que le travail, bien que l'électricien fait des évaluations et des recommandations, mais parfois certaines organisations, par manque de ressources internes pour corriger tout de suite les besoins, peut-être ça prend un peu de temps parce que une fois que le problème est identifié, les solutions sont proposées, il faut corriger. Et parfois, ça prend du temps à les mettre en œuvre parce qu'il y a aussi la question des ressources derrière. Et nous, par exemple, au niveau d'Oxfam, on a réglé progressivement les soucis qui avaient été identifiés dans les rapports de l'électricien. Nous avons corrigé progressivement quand on avait les moyens pour corriger. Et aujourd'hui, Inch'Allah, on a pu quand même mettre tous nos circuits aux normes et grâce à, n'est-ce pas, à ce travail. Donc, je pense que ce sont peut-être là les difficultés que je pourrais énumérer.
Ok. Et du coup, j'allais te demander les impacts positifs pour toi et pour les autres organisations. J'imagine qu'avoir un circuit aux normes, c'est un impact positif déjà. Mais est-ce qu'il y en a d'autres?
Euh, je peux dire que déjà, ce n'est pas seulement pour le plaisir d'avoir quand même des circuits aux normes, c'est d'abord une recommandation de sécurité. Et le fait que ça va même au-delà du bien-être, n'est-ce pas, du personnel dans les organisations, mais aussi, vous savez qu'une organisation, il y a des risques que l'organisation, n'est-ce pas, doit se protéger, donc doit euh, se mettre au niveau de certains standards. Donc, il se trouve aussi que dans le pays, par exemple, là où je suis, il n'y a pas assez d'expertise au niveau, n'est-ce pas, de certains domaines techniques. Et donc, le fait d'avoir ce genre de personnes, ça profite, n'est-ce pas, à toutes les organisations. L'impact aussi, c'est que c'est une opportunité que et d'avoir une expertise technique, mais à moindre coût et que ça profite, n'est-ce pas, à tout l'ensemble de la communauté. Et, et je dis que parce que ce que le travail que Élysée a pu faire, si chaque organisation devait, n'est-ce pas, recruter son expert, je pense que ça pouvait, n'est-ce pas, être plus cher. Et le fait que les organisations se sont mis ensemble et qu'au final, euh, son travail a pu régler le problème de tout le monde, je pense que euh, c'est une très belle opportunité. Mais aussi l'impact que je pourrais également marquer, c'est que le travail de l'expert n'a pas seulement, s'est pas contenté seulement de régler les problèmes, mais il a formé des ressources locales qui pourront, n'est-ce pas, relayer après. Parce que moi, par exemple, dans la zone de Pawa, Batangafo, là où j'ai mes bases, et l'électricien a profité pour former les électriciens locaux et à leur donner des conseils sur comment ils doivent faire. Ça veut dire que, sachant qu'il ne pourra pas être sur le site toute la durée de sa vie, il doit partir. Il faut que les recommandations qu'il fait à l'organisation puissent être après mises en œuvre par les ressources locales. Donc, c'est aussi un renforcement des capacités qu'il a pu faire. Et aujourd'hui, par exemple, à Pawa, à Batangafo, les électriciens avec lesquels il a travaillé, c'est eux maintenant, après, ils ont pris la relève pour, n'est-ce pas, essayer d'assurer les services après pour les bases de ces organisations. Et donc, c'est aussi ça, c'est un impact à la fois pour les organisations, mais aussi pour la communauté, parce qu'au final, elle a contribué à renforcer, n'est-ce pas, la capacité en laissant, n'est-ce pas, un transfert de compétences au niveau local.
Super.
Voilà. Donc, pour moi, c'est tout ça.
Super,
Voilà.
merci.
Au-delà de l'aspect économique, des bénéfices, voilà.
Ouais.
Merci.
Et du coup, j'ai une dernière question un peu rapide. Est-ce que tu voudrais reparticiper à ce genre d'initiative? Et si tu devais donner des conseils à un groupe d'ONG qui voudrait faire ce genre de collaboration dans un autre pays, quels conseils tu pourrais leur donner?
Moi, je pense que les initiatives mutualisées aujourd'hui, c'est une très belle opportunité à saisir pour les organisations. Parce que quand j'ai cité déjà les impacts positifs, il faut savoir que les expertises, il n'y en a pas partout. C'est une réalité que là où on part pour mener des opérations humanitaires, les experts ne sont pas là-bas. Et donc, il y a une question de coût qui est là. Pour avoir une ressource humaine de qualité, ça coûte. Et aujourd'hui, avec la rareté des financements, toutes les organisations ne peuvent pas s'offrir certains luxes. Et donc, ce genre d'initiative permettent quand même que tout le monde se mette ensemble pour avoir ne serait-ce qu'une ressource de qualité. Et ça, je pense que c'est une opportunité. Nous avons, avec Hulo, aujourd'hui, on a identifié beaucoup de domaines dans lesquels on devait, n'est-ce pas, travailler là-dessus en commun. Je dirais, par exemple, la question de gestion des déchets, la question aujourd'hui en République centrafricaine, la question des garages mécaniques, la question du transport, qui coûte extrêmement cher aujourd'hui. Toutes les villes, les accès sont difficiles, surtout en transport commun, transport comme on appelle des marchandises, les camions, ça coûte extrêmement cher. Il faut que vraiment ces genres d'initiatives soient encouragées et ça permet également de mutualiser les ressources. Nous sommes déjà à plein pied dans l'initiative, n'est-ce pas, du mécanicien mutualisé. Et depuis l'année dernière, on avait même fait une proposition. Nous nous sommes adhérés à la feuille de route de Hulo pour l'année 2025, dans laquelle il y a beaucoup d'activités, mais peut-être la difficulté, c'est avoir tous les moyens pour, n'est-ce pas, s'adhérer à toutes ces initiatives. Nous nous sommes positionnés sur 3 thématiques, à savoir la question de la gestion des déchets. Et pour l'initiative mécanicien mutualisé, là, nous avons déjà fait des démarches, on a déjà mené un plaidoyer auprès de notre siège pour avoir des ressources. Je suis en train de me battre également pour l'initiative de la gestion des déchets, mais aussi pour le transport, n'est-ce pas, mutualisé. Donc, c'est vraiment ce que j'ai dit, c'est que vraiment c'est une belle opportunité et je dirais à toutes ces organisations d'en profiter parce que ça permet en tout cas de faire de l'optimisation des ressources parce que les ressources se raréfient en ce moment.
Génial. Merci beaucoup, Ézéchiel.
Voilà.
Merci pour ton temps et merci pour ces messages hyper intéressants et encourageants.
Merci.
And I will give the mic
Merci.
back to Rebecca.
Merci.
Merci.
Merci et je salue tout le monde.
Merci bien. Thank you so much, Ezekiel. And thank you also, Cecile, and to Erin for the translation. One of the things I like about the fully remote sessions like this is that we have the opportunity to connect around the world. So thank you so much, Ezekiel, for connecting to us and sharing your experiences firsthand. That means a lot more value to us to learn from them. So let's have a look at a couple of different types of joint HR initiatives now. So we've looked at this first example. We're going to look at two more. There may be a time where you have an ongoing need and more of a structural need for a joint HR, and where you could share costs based on a percentage of time across different organizations. And there's a way of doing this that we want to present that's been kind of prototyped already. It could be that it doesn't have a specific end date. Maybe it's something which is a continuous need in your structures for several years, and you can adapt that job description, the deployment of that resource to dedicate a certain percentage of their time across different organizations. It's a kind of insourcing, outsourcing model. We'll share an example or two of these and how that's worked. They can come from different origins and from different triggers. In our experience so far, which is quite small, it's better when there's 2 or 3 participants rather than more than this. Again, as Cecile highlighted, the management costs and the administrative time to manage these things has to be worthwhile, as I'm sure you can imagine. So we'll give you a first example of Burkina Faso, where if we can, perfect, thanks very much, Erin, you read my mind. So hiring a shared staff in Burkina Faso, there was a need identified during a country coordination meeting. So this is something which Hulo's cooperative members go through a couple of times a year to come together and say, right, what are our shared needs? What's the Venn diagram of problems that we're facing that we could try and address together? So what's that sweet spot in the middle where we all have a need and it makes sense for us to try and resource pool? And that's across different types of initiatives, but it's a really productive meeting usually. And in this instance, in Burkina Faso, they identified that they needed an IT officer and that they all needed an element of IT support, but they didn't necessarily have a need for an IT officer each. So in this case, it was initially going to be 3 NGOs, it ended up being 2. There was an IT officer recruited and worked for 2 NGOs for a year. This solved kind of budget challenges. It was across Première Agence Internationale de Solidarité Internationale, sharing this resource during 2024. They agreed and negotiated with Hulo's support for facilitation what the percentage split would be. It wasn't 50-50. It ended up that they weren't exactly the same size organizations with the same needs. So they agreed a percentage split that was proportional. And the staff in this case moved between the offices according to a schedule. And I think, as Ezekiel highlighted, the key is in the planning. The key is in getting into the detail together and ironing out, okay, well, who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? Where will they be based? And not to overlook what's the experience for that individual. I'm sure many of us have been in a situation where we have more than one manager. It's not always the most pleasant experience. So how can we make sure that if we are sharing a staff member, that they have a positive experience from that and that they can also have really constructive ways to feedback if things aren't working as well as they could be? So this one came from a planning need. So this was identified in a planning meeting. It was prepared. It was strategic, some might say, and it would be continuing. But unfortunately, there were funding cuts this year that precipitated that one to stop. Let's look at a different example. Go a little bit further away to the Middle East region, where we had a more spontaneous need for sharing a staff. And this was a more of an opportunistic approach to identify this need. So this was where somebody was already working for one of the organizations, and an opportunity was identified bilaterally there to share that resource. So I'm going to invite Mahmoud Khalifa to speak to this experience a bit. Khalifa, what would you like to share on this? What worked well? What would you do differently next time, if that's okay to ask?
Of course. Thank you very much, Rebecca, for the introduction, and hello to everyone in this call. It's a pleasure to be speaking to all of you. So when it comes to the specific situation and the specific experience that we had as Hulo in sharing staff with ACF France in Iraq, it has been short but an extremely rewarding experience. Throughout this experience, and as starting and launching in new activities in in a country where, of course, we have partners, we have a good understanding of the context and the needs, but still we don't have an actual footprint in the country. Sharing a staff with another organization, a big organization as ACF France, and a senior management position has been very, very beneficial for our activities. As we can all imagine, and for any recruiter, the dream of any recruitment, and in this specific situation of launching new activities, is to be able to identify an individual who is knowledgeable, who is experienced, who understands the context, and in the specific case of Hulo's operations, who understands the market as well. And we were able, luckily, through identifying Fadi and the collaboration of ACF, to tick that box and tick it very well. Not only this, but as well to be supported by an institution and to be partnering with an organization that has as well its own experience, its own institutional memory, which would be very important in the type of operations that that we are aiming for and we are planning to achieve in the country. Of course, this has as well another layer of added value. I'm mentioning that because from my own experience and from what I've seen through this great collaboration that we had in Iraq, that joint HR isn't only about sharing a staff or sharing a specific individual HR. No, it's starting a new partnership and a relationship with another institution where we can be merging and working on producing processes, procedures, where we can merge between one process and another to be able to go to the most optimum, or let's say the best case scenario out of the two of them. And this is exactly what we have experienced in Iraq, to be able to finalize, of course, a joint procurement initiative for health insurance that included several INGOs with a complex market like health insurance. This has been quite a strong challenge that we managed to successfully achieve. And of course, a lot of this gratitude goes to Fadi, Hulo's focal point, as well as the head of the logistic department in F. So this is about the light part, about the nice part. But of course, life isn't only roses. Everything comes with its own challenges, with its own hiccups. But the idea is not to try to avoid them, but to be prepared to address them and to minimize any impact that can come out of them. So again, I'm speaking from my own experience, which has been limited to several months, but I think it was enough to be able to identify some key points that we need to have in place prior moving forward and during the process as well of sharing this HR. Of course, communication and coordination is a vital point, and this has already been mentioned by Ezekiel, and I'm sure will be mentioned over and over again. But for this specific modality of joint HR, I don't think we can mention this enough. The communication and coordination in terms as well of clear roles and responsibilities, clear reporting lines, clear lines of communication. This is imperative. This is necessary to ensure the success of this experience and the success of this joint initiative. In addition to this, it doesn't only rely on the individual or the joint HR. This needs to be as well fed through a relationship and through a partnership between the managers, between the organizations. There should be a certain level of course, maturity of the staff and of the line management to have an open communication channel, to have an open mind and understanding. This is the only, and not the only, but this is one of the main points to ensure the success of such experience. And for the second point, which of course can differ from one position to another, and this is one of the things that I think has been as well addressed by Cecile, that there is no one size fit all. We need to be able to adjust and adapt based on which position are we sharing. Is it a technical position? Is it a senior management position? Because of course, the modality of sharing will be different between one position and another, based on the needs, responsibilities, and so on. In our case, which we were sharing, is senior position, senior for Hulo as well as for ACF and part of the SMT, identifying the and identifying the HR to be accompanying this position is very important, because again, we need someone with experience and maturity to be able to navigate the conflicting or the overlapping priorities. This is very important to make sure that none of the partners is feeling left behind or under prioritized. Identification of the proper HR, especially for senior management position, is again necessary. So this staff need to have a certain level of space as well, and a certain level of flexibility to identify their own priorities and the certain amount of time to invest in which period. To give a quick and short example, there are certain peaks, let's say, in any operations where during this period we have a high peak because of proposal preparation, because of tenders, because of this and this and that. Well, in that case, the staff and the focal point identified need to be able to be autonomous in identifying which time to invest, when, and for whom. Of course, all of this needs to be supported by certain documentation to ensure fairness and to ensure clarity in the process, like timesheets and so on. But of course, I will not take your time to go into these details, because this is something that comes organically. However, this is not from my own, again, experience and point of view, the recipe to ensure success. However, is the staff with both managements of the organization, both or more, of course, two or more management of the organization. I hope I answered the question.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Khalifa. So I think this is Fadi at the front of the picture, isn't it? So at least for this moment, the picture was taken. He looks quite happy with the situation. But I know he's not on the call. Are you able to share what his experience was, or anything that he shared with you around his experience of being a joint HR staff?
Of course. So just a quick point of correction. This is Samer, Lebanon SI. Fadi is, they look similar, but he's not Fadi. However, that's
okay.
That's okay. Yes,
okay,
yes. No, but that's fine. So from Fadi, of course,
yeah.
Of course. So what I can say, and from the debriefing that we had on that, I believe Fadi, as an individual, of course, on one hand, he really believes in what Hulo is doing and why Hulo is present, which is a great motive and a great pillar into the success of sharing. But as well, the point that he shared with me, that of course there have been ups and downs. At a certain point, the reporting line, maybe we needed to clarify it further, and all of those are lessons that we learned and things that we worked on troubleshooting and let's say solving them on the spot. However, the open line of communication that me, myself, as the line manager for Fadi from Hulu side had with him, I believe has been extremely extremely beneficial with high advantage, because this can allow as well to adjust and not to accumulate accumulate them. So experience for him. He enjoyed the work of Hulo as well as he managed very
I think,
well,
Khalifa, unfortunately, we're
but this
slightly
is from
losing
will
the
be able
connection.
to juggle. Okay, is it better now?
Sure, but we might. It's okay because I'm conscious of time. We're going to move on. But thank you
Perfect.
so
Thank you.
much. It was brilliant, and really pleased to hear the experiences. That it seems like again that there was a need to be really clear what I hear on roles and responsibilities to make sure that that was super clear as to who was doing what, and that communication was paramount in keeping everything flowing. Not just communication in the setup, but also communication throughout the deployment of that staff member. So thank you very much for sharing the experiences. We're going to come on to our last example, which is where we have a thematic area, an area of specialism, a cross-cutting topic, where there's a need, and it's something which organizations need to fulfill, but again could be challenging and a challenging market to recruit in. So for this one, I'd like to come to Feline and ask you to share your experiences, please, on joint HR in environmental sustainability and what you see as the potential for this going forward.
So thank you, Rebecca. Hello, everybody. So yes, I will speak about the joint HR that could push a bit in the field for more sustainability and reducing environmental impact. So first, I want to slide, please. I want to describe a bit why did Hulo propose this kind of joint HR dedicated to the environmental initiative, then how we get started, a very quick presentation then of the job description, and then also quick presentation of the challenges and opportunities that we view on the topic. So first, about the why, we all know here that at the moment, all humanitarian people have a lot of pressure on their shoulder, facing multiple challenges with reducing their environmental footprint, but also meet even more needs every day, with an increasing frequency and intensity of climatic disaster and all the humanitarian needs linked to this topic, with less funding. So we are convinced that the coordination and optimization of the resources becomes really urgent, specifically in the field, because we all know and see that this kind of human resources in the field for the moment are really rare. Second, we also know that this kind of expertise costs a lot of money, and that it's not accessible for all humanitarian organization, and that it will be not found by every donor for every organization. So also here, we are convinced that resource pooling could have effective impact. Also, what we saw since now more than a year is that all the humanitarian organizations have common challenges. We all see that we need to reduce the carbon footprint and environmental impact of the goods and services procurement. We all have the same challenge with that topic. Same with waste management. And to have access of this sustainable services and goods, we need to be together to decrease the prices of this type of project. Same for waste management. If we would like to manage this waste with legal actors, we need volume. Also, we have to be more and more compliant with the environmental regulation at national or international level. The donors' expectation will rise in the coming year, for sure. And so this is a necessity for collaboration also. Then there is an urgency to operationalize the environmental ambitions. We all see that every humanitarian organization for the moment starts with carbon assessment, environmental policies, etc. But we have a lack of concrete action in the field. We need some information and example of solution, for example, of eco-friendly practices to integrate them into the daily operation. We need research of local solution. We need to test the VREC or the RH tool that already exists, but that they need to be adapted with the constraints on the field. So the priority today is to act, and to act, we need HR on the topic. So this is it for the why. How we get started, we decide to choose 2 pilot countries, DRC, so a person for Goma, and Burkina Faso. Why? Because Hulo starts his experience with joint environmental initiative in these both countries. So we had experience, we already start joint environmental initiative in this context. The initial schedule was to recruit, do the recruitment of this person between January and March, to open the position early April for 9 months. By now, because of the security situation in DRC, because of the USAID crisis, etc., the position in DRC is in standby, and same for Burkina Faso. We are waiting from answer to different donor and specifically from ECHO to see how we could manage in this specific moment. We choose to recruit national staff because we are convinced that we need to transfer local knowledge. We need response, answer, adapt to the local needs. And this is why it makes a lot of sense to recruit this person in the field. For the budget, as you already saw, the plan was, for example, to have 9 NGO, and each NGO to finance 1 month of the salary of this person. About the job description, really quickly. Next slide, please. We divide it in 3 parts, with the first part on waste management with assessment, identifying solution, implementation of 1 or several initiatives, and to do awareness raising. For sustainable procurement, the objective of this person is to develop some workshop with humanitarian organization, with suppliers, help of the definition of environmental, social, and governance criteria, and also to do some market assessment. And a last part of monitoring and developing lesson learned, monitoring activities, etc., and sharing the learning with all the stakeholders. About challenges and opportunities, the first one, of course, is the limited funding and resource constraints. But I gave you here an example of Burkina Faso. And I want to underline the fact that more NGOs, more humanitarian organizations we have in this kind of initiative, less expensive is the cost. So I encourage everybody in the call today to participate to this kind of initiatives. The second one is, and particularly now, this competition between operational challenges and sustainability goals. But I want also to underline the fact that if we are not acting today, the cost of doing nothing today will raise the money that we will have to spend later. I recommend everybody to read the really good report of IFRC, The Cost of Doing Nothing, explaining these challenges. Also, I had a lot the question about the lack of skilled staff in the field, but we study a bit the different schools and training that we could find in DRC or Burkina Faso, but other operating countries. And we are convinced that we will find really good profile. And also we are here at HQ to support, so no issue on that point. And also we saw that different humanitarian organization has different priorities linked to sustainability, but we are convinced that we need to go step by step, and this is why Hulo defined these two main priorities with waste management, with sustainable procurement, to start somewhere all together, and that is priorities that could be pulled, and that makes sense. Thank you, and I will be very happy to answer your question if you have any.
Thank you very much, Feline. So maybe a question from me. I'll steal one while I'm sure participants are thinking of questions to ask you as well. So you were perhaps a bit unlucky with the countries that were selected for this pilot. But what's coming next, do you think? What do you think we can take from the experiences so far and still take that into future scale? Do you think it's something which can be scaled up, or are there challenges on reaching scale?
I'm convinced that now we are quite surprised by all the crises, and that it's a really hard moment for everybody. But I know also that unfortunately, with the closure of a lot of offices and guest house, etc., we will have a lot of waste to manage also, because we will need to reduce the warehouses that we have in the different countries. So it will be an opportunity to everybody also to take this momentum and this crisis link to the topic of waste management, etc. For Burkina Faso, it's not done yet. We are waiting from some answer for the budget of different members and partners to see if the recruitment, for the moment, it's only a standby, but maybe it will be postponed. We saw also that in other regions, such as Middle East, it could have some opportunities in the coming month also. So I'm convinced that we will do something this year. Probably shorter. It could be like we plan 9 months. It could be 4 months just to try and to do the pilot somewhere.
Do you
the
think
needs
maybe
will be
that's
here.
do you think that's maybe a reflection? Do you think planning something for a year is too long in the current context, that we need to be planning on a trialing it because it's something new, right? Do you think we need to be trialing something on a shorter term?
It could be an option. It's not the best one, but it could be like a really precise topic subject, for example, like find solution to avoid that all the old materials that we have in the warehouses are going in the nature. It could be that. So let's see.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Feline. Super. So you've been listening really, really nicely to a lot of us talking. So I'd now like to, before coming to my final panelist today, I'd like to ask you some questions. So we're going to do a short survey using Mentimeter, and you should be able to access this either on the left-hand side there by going to menti.com and entering the code, or if you have a mobile device, by scanning the QR code and getting closer to that. So let's start with the first question. Hopefully you've all managed to get access, and please continue to write your questions. We're going to come to that in a second and have a good Q&A. My first question then to everybody on the call today, Erin, if you're able to progress to the next slide, thank you so much, is I'm just curious to know if you've already shared human resources with other organizations already. So have you already worked with another organization or with multiple other organizations to share human resources, just to gauge the experience on the call and where we're coming at this from? So we'll take a minute or two to some great questions coming through on the chat, some very technical questions here about contracts, legal issues, the administrative side. As we said, the devil is in the detail, how to manage performance. We all know that's great when it's going great, and then it's challenging when it's not. So we're going to come to those technical questions in just a minute. And also good question there around experience of having to share specialized staff between organizations. So we're going to come to that one too. So a real mix on the call. This is good. So we have about 50-50 at the moment of those who've tried already and those who haven't. And then just one more question for you, and I'll leave that one on the screen while we have a chat, is we've presented a few different models today. And I'm just keen to explore, okay, so we looked at that joint HR example for specific activities, one where it's continuous or ongoing, and the last one there that Philene presented where it's kind of technical. Which of these are relevant or interesting for you and your organizations to learn more about? Is it all of them? Is it one in particular? You should hopefully be able to select as many as you like. Just curious to see what's of interest there. And so I'm going to ask Fabrice Perrault to join me now and have a quick discussion about this. So Fabrice, first of all, I'm just going to check that you're there and your microphone is working okay.
Hi, Rebecca. Yes, I'm there.
Hey, nice to see you. So for me, this reminds me a lot of the first time we started talking about consortium and what a nightmare it was to organize, and how the first one we did was really challenging. And then as we start to do more of them, it gets easier and easier. What's your reflection on joint HR as a model? What role do you think it has in the sector?
I think that this is something that we were thinking about before as a nice to have thing, nice thing to do in order to get our resources optimized. But now with the current financial situation in the sector, this is a must have. This is something we must work on. When I think on where we are going to be, let's say next year or the year after,
yeah.
With the drastic reduction of US funding, we for many of us, we translate that reduction of funding in a reduced capacity to finance our support functions at field level and also HQ level. So I wanted to share with you the example of my organization, Solidarity International, as we are currently reviewing our structures to these new financial realities. And that's clear that the support teams, and especially logistics, are already being downsized.
Yeah.
And that despite the fact that even before the crisis, securing funding for this specific function was already really difficult. And I really believe that if we look ahead, field organizational charts will shrink dramatically. That's going to happen, and we have to prepare for it. And working today on sharing resources, on finding new way of working between organizations it's a no choice. Actually, we have to work on it right now to prepare the future.
So, there's a real risk that we go backwards otherwise, isn't there? I'm sure when you and I started in the sector, if we can remember that far back, we had generalist roles, generalist positions. We've spent decades now building specialisms in warehouse management, specialism skills in procurement, in fleet management, in global assurance, in monitoring and evaluation. And we're at risk of collapsing back to general roles. Would you agree if we don't try and think outside of our own organizations and embrace these new ways of working, or do you think that that's not going to happen?
It has been explained with the three wonderful panelists before on how expertise how easy it is to share expertise between our resources. When we talk about cross-cutting issues, it's going to be a bit more difficult, but depend on what we are talking about. Talk about internally inside an organization, having a shared logistics coordination amongst organizations is going to be difficult. Okay, you cannot coordinate all activities, but taking it sector by sector, environments, techniques, procurement, that's highly feasible for me. That's feasible because to me, it's kind of we don't have any obstacle to use procurement centers. Okay.
Yeah.
Because we all buy the same stuff actually. So we all buy the same stuff. We do that when we do that on our own at country level. We have each 1, 2, 3, 4 staff for buying the same stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So at some point, it's going to be that easy. It's going to be easy or not that difficult to group together the staff buying the thing and reducing the overall workforce for doing the same thing. And this is something I truly believe, but it's not going to be easy. There are lots of constraints for that, and there are a lot of fear of organization of letting it go and losing a part of the control we have of on our own activities, and especially logistics activity.
And I suppose in that regard, there's an opportunity to develop more specialism, right? To be the organization with a specialism in WASH or a specialism in M&E or whatever that might be, that it's not just about losing capacity, but maybe about making strategic choices to specialize.
Yeah. Regarding programmatic activities, is going to be way more complicated than logistics functions or even in some cases financial functions or HR functions. What you were mentioning, food security, water sanitation, and hygiene, that's very specific to each organization, and this is where organization will find and show their added value compared to the other in a sector where the concurrence is very strong. So this part, I'm not sure, but
maybe the buying WASH or the storing WASH or something is where we could look at.
Yes,
where it doesn't add so much USP.
This is what you meant, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because actually there are standards, there are clusters working on standard. Then we are at the end of the day we are all procuring the same items. So that's what I meant, yeah.
And to what extent, I know that you've been a strong advocate for process standardization across logistics and supply chain. To what extent do you think that would enable this kind of interoperability? I reflect, I guess, on things like the software solutions that are being developed at the moment and efforts by others on process standardization. Do you think that helps us accelerate this, or can it just go in parallel?
Okay, standardizing processes and procedures is a prerequisite for working together, actually, and that's really complex because we have the constraints from the donors with different procedures. Then there is the constraints from each organization which comes to the field, to the humanitarian field, with its own culture and way of working and way of putting boundaries on how to get logistics done, and then how they define their procedures. And then there are the systems which are more or less, depending on the system, depending on the software, difficult to set up according to each organization. And what we should be working on and why we should try to harmonize as much as we can is first to allow our team to work closely together and to work easily together, or to have one staff understanding easily all organizations are working, so it can be helpful for all organizations, and then facilitating the way we're setting up the systems so that they can fit to each organization. So working on harmonizing processes and procedures is very complicated, but it's also, I come back to my first point, that's a must-have in the actual in the current situation.
I'm going to move now to talking about change management and influencing different departments. We're big, ugly, complex organizations in this sector, right? Yeah. And unfortunately, decisions aren't always held in a simple, logical place. And so Loic Planetier in the Q&A has raised a really good point that, you know, we're preaching to the choir a bit in this group, right? We're all very convinced by those who are on the call. We don't have necessarily a good representation from country directors or DCD ops, or indeed finance managers, HR managers and leaders on the call, which would be necessary to make this change happen. How do you go about making that change happen in solidarity? And I know it's not a smooth linear path, but what would be your advice to those on the call when they want to try something like this? How would they go about making that change happen?
Okay, so first of all, I'm not saying that we are managing at Solidarity to doing right, because it's very difficult for all of us, even if I'm trying to push as hard as I can. But the first thing is to convince top management that it is working, that is of added value, and that we can save money, or that we can go on that's the new deal, but that we can go on our humanitarian activities with the low resource we have or will get. So you need to convince. How to convince? Then you convince by examples, and this is what we are doing today. Hulo presenting different types of sharing resources, or Oxfam presenting how they could benefit from the Hulo expertise. But Hulo is not the only one doing that. But still, we need to prove that it works. At some point today, thanks to the crisis, I would say, if I may say so, everyone is starting to realize. Behind the doors, the discussion are about it. What can we improve? What can we optimize? How we close enough to that organization to try to see more synergies, and in all the sectors, not only logistics. So that's something that will be obvious by the time in the next coming months. Today we are still in a state of shock because the crisis is just 2-3 months behind us. But in few weeks and few months, it's going to be more obvious that we need to work in that direction, and then it's going to be more easy to convince top management. But then there are many constraints on that, and one constraint was in the Q&A asked by Estelle. What administrative and legal complexity of doing that, contracting shared staff across multiple organizations that can become very burdensome, especially internationally, and managing contracts, question of management, question of sanction, and so on and so on. It's very complicated, and to convince. You don't just need to convince the top management, or also HR. Also, HR needs to be convinced. When it's working well, everything is fine. But as soon as you face a problem with the joint HR, this is where the difficult part.
Yeah, and that's where we figure out, I think, how strong are relationships. I mean, Khalifa spoke about it's beyond joint HR. It's about forming partnerships, isn't it? And that's when we figure out how strong those partnerships are when things start to go wrong, and how do we handle them. And I suppose in that sense, perhaps the model where there's an existing staff and trying to share that staff and cost recover some of their time could be an easy entry point, rather than necessarily, if you've never tried this before, going straight for a new recruitment and joining and setting everything up from scratch. Do you agree, or?
Yes and no, because as Solidarité, I was benefiting from the experience in Burkina Faso and in CAR that was also already mentioned regarding hiring an electrician or hiring an IT officer. This is not a staff that were already there, already hired, and we were the first time we were only 4 organizations working on that, and to be honest, that was okay to do. It was for a short-term period, so no big worries in terms of commitment. And on top of that, that was not the first time we did that. We do that since 10 years now. I remember that there was a company specialized in telecommunications, and when the technician was deployed to the field, he split his time between organizations and then shared the bill between organizations. So that's so easy as it is. The only difference that we're not dealing now with another company, we are dealing with ourselves. So re-billing, re-invoicing.
An interesting point, because of course, when we think about the procurement process that goes into sourcing consultants or consultant expertise, that's already a place where joint procurement initiatives are proving valuable, where cost sharing across using expertise. And so this is in a way just a different manifestation of that in an HR environment instead.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you, we've talked a lot about field resource sharing. Of course, it's a different type of topic to have, but do you think there's also potential for this at HQ or in different places in our organization? Do you think it's the right time to be having some of those conversations?
I definitely think
I'll give you a nice, easy question.
Yeah, that's nice and easy, and no, actually, that's exactly the right time to ask that kind of question. But it's going to be difficult for the reason I was mentioning before, the question of culture and identity of each NGO. The fact that it's way more easier to talk about merging activities when you are at field level in the same capital city, when the office of your colleague, your HI colleague, your Oxfam colleague is 2 blocks away, than when we are splitted basically all over the world with our HQs. But still, at some point, again, we'll face some kind of reality where I will not be able to afford the same staffing that I was able before. And at some point, I need to find a solution. Either I cannot guarantee anymore a level of service to my colleagues at field level because we are basically not enough people to do it. So I try to regroup the activities that I could regroup, including procurement, why not, and see what standard we can find and how we can merge parts of the activities. That's very theoretical. Of course, it's very complicated, but that's the right moment to think, is it somehow possible or not?
And of course, that's the change process as it is in field locations and everywhere around the world, that we know that the best change processes are those which are really consultative, as opposed to, pretending to be consultative, but where we really create that together. So I hope that if that does come to you as a need, that consultation helps to create a good solution. I noticed I'm just checking the chats and the questions if we have any more questions to address. Grace, you mentioned about HR portal systems and how can that ensure the credibility or minimum standardized capacities of this pool of talent. I think that's a really interesting point. How do we assure that that there is a kind of common approach to what is talent, what do we need, what do we want to resource? Do you have any thoughts on that, Fabrice? I suppose there's a side of this that talks to processes, systems. How can we leverage our systems to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And we're all using HR systems more or less now. But there's also the question of, do we have an agreement on what good looks like when we're recruiting a profile? Do we have common standards there? How close are we to that in logistics?
Actually, we've never worked on that, so it's hard to understand. But knowing that in the sector, we've all moved from one NGO to the other. We've all seen what a job description looks like in one NGO and how it looks like in the other one. We all been through different recruitment processes. At some point, finding a common strategic way of recruiting that will fit to everyone's organization won't be a nightmare, I would say. I'm not HR, I say, but especially in logistics, that's gonna be we're gonna find our way to do it. But once again, I'm not HR. I know, again, question of culture, question of identity, and we all think that we are doing the thing differently from the others, that we have an added value compared to the other on that and that. But at some point, let's sit, talk, compare the processes, and see how far we are. That's basically a gap analysis process to run between organizations to see how different it is. But I'm not sure it is that different, to be honest.
And that's it. Perhaps those conversations need to start happening in parallel to these experiments and specific needs to find out how far we are and whether we all want to be in the same place as well. I'd ask maybe for a final question to you, Fabrice, and I promise to let you go. What would be your advice to organizations on the call who haven't tried joint initiatives and specifically joint HR initiatives before, for whom this is a new topic? What would be your advice going forward?
To contact Hulo.
Okay, thank you. But why would you say that?
I would say that because we have the expertise at Hulo, and I say we when I talk about Hulo, but we have the expertise. The example was today, the 3 person talking about what they've seen at field level. Then try to. My advice will be try to identify in your own organization what is my main difference, operationally speaking, and on what activities am I not that different from the other organization, and I won't lose anything if I start doing this thing with other organization or letting these things done by someone else. And it's the first thing to try to identify that, because at no point we want to kill the identity of each organization or the added value of each organization. So the first thing is to try that, and you'll see, I think that especially within logistics, there are plenty, not all, but plenty of sectors where we're not that different. Okay, that's the first thing. Then try to convince local level first, because I think it's easier to start from local level, but then top management, depending on your position. But try to convince. And when I say kind of as a joke, talk to Hulo, is talk to Hulo because Hulo has 15 members today who have been experiencing this in their own organization. So through Hulo, you can get in touch with organizations who tried that already and who have faced challenges with their management, with their administrative constraints, HR, and so on and so on. So Hulo
Can build on that rather than having to relearn it, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Fabrice. And thanks for joining us, all of the panelists today. A big thank you. So thank you to Ezekiel, to Khalifa, to Cecile, to Feline, and to Fabrice. I'm just going to make a few closing remarks, and please feel free to continue to post your questions and comments in the chat. Erin, I just ask you to reshare the slides on the final slide. Maybe we have some results, actually. Do we have some results on the final Menti? Okay, so it looks like there's some interest, so that's good. Thank you very much. If we can progress to the final slide. I think we've had some really, for me, it's been very interesting discussions. This is a new thing, and we had some debates internally. Is it too new to bring it to you to share and to share some very early learning? We haven't got buckets of impact measurement yet. We don't have a big fancy report to share, but we really thought, given the context and given what everybody's struggling with at the moment, that this was the right time to bring this. If you would like to connect with us, we would really love to hear from you, and the email address is on screen. So we've explained, a range of different models today to implement joint resources. There may be more out there to try as well. We've heard about the importance of planning together, of thinking through how these resources will be managed and deployed, of working through the details together. But we really shouldn't be afraid of the admin burden. There's an admin burden in everything we do. There's an admin burden in restructuring our teams, in all of the alternatives that we face to joint resources right now. There is equally a burden administratively. And perhaps we need to rethink and reshift our minds around this idea of resourcing and structures and have a go. The risk is not so high to explore this. We've seen that there are some challenges, but not so many risks that we should be put off. And the first time that we do anything is always going to be harder. So I really hope that these experiences can be built on, that we can capture that learning and move forward. The point for me is that we have to try. We're at risk today of really losing the institutional knowledge, the talent, the development that we've spent decades investing in, not just in supply chain and logistics, but across our organization. There are solutions out there, and it's time to try it, to learn and to improve. And as a community, I really hope that we can do that and that we can facilitate that learning to come together. So please remember that together we are stronger. Thank you very much for joining the session today. And I wish you a great rest of the week and a great HNPW. So thank you.